If you live anywhere between Austin and San Antonio, what's happening here already shapes your daily life, even if you don't realize it yet. More than 5 million people now live in this narrow corridor. Census projections put that number above 8 million by 2050. Henry Cisneros and Bob Rivard are co-authors of a book that argues this region is changing faster than we're prepared for. The real question isn't whether this is happening. It's whether we're ready for what comes next.
First, 2 Central Texas cities are preparing for their own mega region. Think the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex.
What makes this moment so unusual is that the future of this region isn't fully decided yet. The growth is already underway. That part is inevitable. What isn't inevitable is how it unfolds.
Today, there's 5.3 million people from north of Austin to south of San Antonio. I like to say Pflugerville to Floresville. 5.3 million people, which is a population larger than Louisiana in that little region. It's a population larger than 25 states. And what the census tells us is that by 2050, they're projecting the population of the Austin-San Antonio megaregion to be 8.3 million people. But I think one of the key recognitions is this is going to happen. The census says you're going from 5.3 million to 8.3 million people. There are larger forces at work, larger forces unleashed that are going to continue to bring people here. And so it's really not a choice between saying, let's not do it and we will be fine. Let's not do it means we're going to be congested, reductions in the quality of life, and a pretty troubled place. So what you have to do is recognize that the growth is going to occur and then prepare.
Why do you think this is the case? Why has the Austin-San Antonio region become such of a hot spot? What's made this place so appealing?
I think probably the most significant thing is we're in Texas. A few years ago when Texas was creating as many jobs as the other 49 states combined, and we still have the greatest in-migration of any place. Literally hundreds of people come to every city, thousands to the region. Why? Because of the tax structure in this state, because of its reputation as being business friendly, because the demographics of the population here are young and growing, right internally, because we have this wonderful riches of universities that are among the country's best. You put all that together, and then you add on top of that the mythical Texas, the legend of Texas as a place where you go to start over, the place where you go to create. And it's a kind of a ready-made formula for growth.
But the point is, one of the attractions to San Antonio and all of Texas is our cost of living. And yes, it's much more expensive than it was a decade ago, but it's still a bargain compared to life on either the West Coast or East Coast.
Been acting like 2 different cities, and each has a cluster of communities around them. And by the way, that cluster north of Austin is nothing to sneeze at. We're talking about cities like Round Rock and Georgetown and Cedar Park and Leander and Pflugerville, several of which are about 130,000 people each already. Williamson County, north of Austin. And then the corridor itself, San Marcos and New Braunfels, but then there's another cluster at the southern end here, which includes very prominently Seguin, which has become a serious manufacturing center with Holt there and the Japanese manufacturers there. Perhaps because SH-130 now connects northern Austin, and along the way is that Tesla plant that's about 3/4 of a mile long, and just off of that, the new Samsung plant at Taylor, which is a $45 billion semiconductor plant.
Population growth is a good thing. You look at cities across the country or even countries across the world. If the population is declining, that is a very negative sign for perhaps the health of that country and that future economy. And so it's a good thing. It feels like it's inevitable. And so it surely seems like the question is now, how do we proactively manage it to the best of our ability? Because I think that maybe the first question that comes to people's minds, and certainly mine, is just handling that many people, energy, water, et cetera, So if y'all could maybe spell that out a little bit more, what at a high level those infrastructure needs, or maybe are we most hurting right now and most need to address?
We need to get past the front page news stories about San Antonio, fastest growing city, or Austin, fastest growing city, and everybody saying, yay, we're the fastest growing, and going, yeah, but what are the implications? And by the way, it's not just Austin and San Antonio, but it's multiple cities that are in the corridor and in and around the corridor. All you have to do is be in New Braunfels or San Marcos or Round Rock or Bernie or Seguin at rush hour, or even times at not rush hour, to see how fast those cities are outgrowing their infrastructure. So I think it was important for us to say we need to take a step back, and instead of just crowing over our growth compared to other parts of the country, we need to examine closely what are the implications of this growth, and are we ready for it? And what's it going to be like in 20, 30, 40, and 50 if we just keep the current course and we don't make more definitive plans to meet that growth?
The first thing to do when you see the numbers is then to look at the implications. And the implications are that growth demands to be addressed. And to pick the areas of significance, obviously, traffic and congestion is one that's immediately obvious. If you don't build the roadways, if you don't go the next step and do things like build rail, then you will be predictably certain to be congested and overcrowded, and the quality of life declines, and the amount of time people are waiting on freeways, standing still, increases. So traffic interlinked transportation systems is one of those. Water is particularly significant in this region. We live in a generally water scarce area of the country. God forbid we should have a drought like the drought of record of the 1950s, because they wouldn't be able to sustain the growth. But what that means is you have to think about things like desalination, which Corpus is doing, extending lines to aquifers where there is water that don't require those volumes and are willing to sell some portion of it. San Antonio has actually grown dramatically in population, but not in water total usage because of conservation measures. So that's another one. Power. You can plan power the way we did, and it seemed that we had adequate power for the long run, but you can't anticipate things like data centers, which Microsoft data center here in Bexar County uses more power than the Toyota plant that produces 240,000 tundras and sequoias every year. That's the thirstiness for power. We used to consider ourselves lucky that we had a Microsoft data center. Now we have 6 and 7 lined up to be built in this area, and Austin even more. Then there's issues like environmental quality and open space. I'm very excited about the work that former county judge of Real County, Gary Merritt, is doing on what he calls the Great Springs Project, that would link Barton Springs in Austin and all of the creeks and trails between Austin and San Antonio, through Comal County, through San Marcos, through to the Blue Hole. And then that easily extends itself along the San Antonio River, the entire River Walk and River Reach. So that's another issue. If we don't think about something like Great Springs now and plan it now, it will not exist. There will be subdivisions, and there will be Costco's, and there will be HEBs, all along that route, but not a definable way to connect the places with a green trail.
Ground those airplanes for a few months and have those leaders drive on I-35, we very quickly would come up with a mass transit solution, because they would find out, like the rest of the world, that we're at absolute gridlock. It's contributing enormously to the worsening air quality. It's economically a real buzzkill, because we lose a lot of productivity and efficiency by time wasted in bumper-to-bumper traffic. It only takes one serious fender bender there before you have DPS emptying the entire interstate out in one direction, and a 70-minute trip can turn into a 3-hour trip. There's a real dichotomy between the old Austin and the new Austin. When I moved here in the 1980s to San Antonio, Austin had a population that was 400,000 plus. Now, as Henry said, it's the 10th largest city and at a million, and growing
Yep.
by leaps and bounds. They didn't take care of their cultural assets as much as I think we value them in San Antonio. And if you look at what happened east of I-35 in Austin, that's change is profound and not for the better in many ways, in my opinion. There was, massive dislocation of particularly what I would call Austin's barrio, the Latino population of the city that lived over there. And it was kind of a tale of two cities split by I-35. And now it's on the east side, it's prohibitively expensive for longtime residents. How do we make sure that San Antonio stays the unique city that it is, 3 hours from the border, profoundly influenced by its history with Mexico and Spain and its minority-majority population, and how do we avoid that?
What can San Antonio do differently, acting with foresight, like you mentioned, with water, to perhaps, keep an integrity with the culture that it has and serving the residents that live here now, not just higher wage earners potentially that might move in to the city in the future?
Well, I think you are correct to put the arts and culture and a sense of heritage and history into the same language, into the same list as the basic utilities and the other infrastructure. Because it really is so different and so special about San Antonio. Issues like the way we think about water and green space here, from the river all the way down the river reach to the missions. I'm involved with the San Antonio Arboretum, a new opportunity on the south side for really reflection on nature, to the various ethnic groups in San Antonio, the Hispanic community, the African American community, various national origins, a strong Italian population, German heritage. On the one hand, I don't worry about it, but I think it is correct to consciously think about how we accentuate, how we emphasize, and how we allow it to flourish. I've come to the conclusion that the most serious gap at the moment is a venue, a structure where the leaders can talk to each other, and I don't mean just the mayors and the county judges, but the leaders of the universities and the leaders of the community colleges and the leaders of the health institutions and the leaders of the business institutions, the Chamber of Commerce. There's something in the Dallas-Fort Worth area called the North Texas Commission that has worked very, very well. So I think there's lessons to be learned from the kind of structure they've created. I heard someone say, it's not good enough to have these discussions at a cocktail party and leave excited. You have to have systems and structures where people can not just talk, but then work, act, create, execute.
For people really to fathom what is in our control, how do we kind of take hold of our own destiny, so to speak?
The money is there to act on some of these issues. The organizational structure that Henry mentioned we need is not there. We just elected a mayor in San Antonio, Mayor Gina Jones. Next year, we'll either re-elect County Judge Peter Sakai or the former mayor Ron Nirenberg's running against him. Those elected officials need to think less about I'm in charge of the county or I'm in charge of the city, and realize they're part of a larger regional entity that desperately needs a larger entity organized as a public-private partnership. We don't have that. We have metropolitan planning organizations. We have a very good functioning one here. Austin has its one. The San Antonio-Austin Corridor Council exists. But there is no entity where people are getting up every morning saying it's my job to think about the implications of this unprecedented growth and the opportunities and challenges that it creates. And we sometimes think too much about the challenges because they're right in front of us, but they do require immediate attention in my view. And what we're going to have to do, I think, is step back and figure out first, how do we create the entity like Henry talked about existing in North Texas that can address these problems? Because individually, a given mayor, county judge, Chamber of Commerce head, you just can't make any headway with sort of meetings every quarter or every year where you get together and people reconnect, but not much gets done.
Just because you have a golden moment, just because you think you deserve the golden moment on what has been achieved, urban life, public life is not that easy. You have to think about sustaining. You have to think about expanding into the future. And that's, I think, where we are in Austin, San Antonio. We have the capacity to act independently across the region, and many will, but it just works better when people are talking to each other and working together. And that's what I think we need to be doing. We can create a 2 + 2 = 5 moment here and live in a very special place.
Whether cities plan together or separately, whether infrastructure keeps pace, and whether San Antonio grows without losing the character that makes it San Antonio. As Henry Cisneros and Bob Rivard made clear, this isn't a problem any single mayor or city can solve alone. It's a regional question that demands regional thinking. The choices made in the next few decades won't just shape skylines or commute times. They'll shape what it feels like to live here. Thanks for watching this episode of Big City, Small Town. If you care about the future of San Antonio and this region that we call home, this is exactly the kind of conversation we're here to have. This episode was made possible with support from our sponsors, Geekdom, Weston Urban, and Plains Capital Bank. If you want to keep up with these conversations, you can sign up for our Big City Small Town newsletters, linked in the description below, or you can go to bigcitysmalltown.com. All right, y'all, thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.